Jacob Rees-Mogg dropped a bombshell on Keir Starmer on live TV. His words were a fierce and heartfelt defense of Britain's farmers, the backbone of the nation who, according to Jacob, are being thrown under the tractor by Labour's inheritance tax on farms. These are the people who spend sleepless nights and endless days with calloused hands and aching backs, ensuring there's food on our tables. And now they're being slapped with a tax that demands the profits of 40 years of hard work. And let's be real, how many of us have the privilege to ignore the fact that the very people who keep us fed are being buried under bureaucratic red tape and unfair policies? Jacob's words should make us all ask ourselves, is this the Britain we want, one where those who work hardest are treated like afterthoughts? Jean trying to survive on margins thinner than a wafer, only to have the government swoop in and demand double with a 7.75% interest rate. Starmer promised to clean up politics and restore trust. Yet within weeks, his government is already neck-deep in the same cronyism he once condemned. Labour doesn't care about food security, or national security for that matter. Farmers are the backbone of Britain, but under Labour, they're being cast aside as inconvenient relics of a countryside. Labour clearly doesn't understand or value. His final blow was as sharp as ever. Labour's policies are a deliberate attack on British farmers, driven by a disdain for intergenerational wealth and rural life. And if that means Britain becomes dependent on imports for food, well, apparently, that's just fine with Starmer's crew. Rees-Mogg made it clear this isn't just bad policy. It's an existential threat to the nation's food. And future first up was Ian Corfield, a Labour donor conveniently handed a cushy treasury role, supposedly meant to be politically neutral Corfield, who's generously shelled out $22,000 to Labour MPS, including $5,000 to Chancellor Rachel Reeves, has sparked allegations of breaches in the ministerial code. Reeves apparently forgot to declare that tidy sum in time Starmer's Ethics and Integrity Commission promised to act independently is nowhere to be seen. So much for cleaning the house. Rees-Mogg's sarcasm peaked when he spotlighted Starmer's $6,000 wardrobe transformation, allegedly funded by Lord Ali, a Labour peer and donor, before and after photos were presented for the nation's amusement. The results underwhelming for that price. Rees-Mogg suggested Starmer could have at least managed a proper double-breasted suit or even learned how to wear a tie, like he means it. Instead, the transformation is as uninspiring as Starmer's leadership secure Starmer. The Holy One is expected to make a speech tomorrow, in which he will say he needs 10 years to turn the country round, within just 50 days. He has already found himself sinking in a slough of his own sleeve. As ISM donate erupts, most serious case appears to be that of Ian Corfield, a former banker and business advisor to the Labour Party, who was given a paid by you, ladies and gentlemen, civil service post in the Treasury. Then there's Lord Ali again, granted a number 10 pass, a privilege, typically for key political personnel, not donors. Rees-Mogg didn't miss the chance to highlight the hypocrisy. Starmer, who crucified Boris Johnson for alleged cronyism, seems to have no problem with a little donor-funded favoritism in his own camp, throwing stones in a glass house. Indeed, and let's not forget, Sir Laurie Magnus Starmer's ethics advisor left, twiddling his thumbs because he can't start investigations without Starmer's approval for someone who preaches about transparency. Starmer sure likes to keep things opaque, joined by the shadow minister for the Department for Environment, Food and Rural Affairs, Dr. Neil Hudson. Neil, thank you very much for coming in. First of all, if the Conservatives get back into government, we would reverse this. That's a clear pro-policy promise. Absolutely clear. I was on the stage today when the leader of the opposition, KMI Baddock, said that very much, so that if we get into power in a few years' time, The Conservatives will reverse this cruel tax, and it's a senseless tax, and it needs to be reversed. Dr. Neil Hudson, a Conservative MP and former vet, backed Jacob up, slamming Labour for their tone-deaf approach to farming. He explained how this tax forces families into heartbreaking decisions, sell off chunks or all of their farms just to stay afloat. Hudson also took a jab at Labour's historical blunders, like their catastrophic handling of the 2001 foot and mouth outbreak, proving they've been clueless about rural Britain for decades. Rees-Mogg wasn't done. He accused Labour of waging class warfare targeting farmers under the guise of fairness while hollowing out entire rural communities. Their push to replace farmland with solar panels is just the cherry on top. Jacob's takeaway: no, I'm not. I'm trying to protect the countryside, because neighbor, how is your monologue helping farmers? 'Cause Labour's not going to listen to that. Are they? That's just class war reverse. Because Labour is trying to destroy the family farm. And that, perfectly well. That £1 million, and it's £1 million for the business assets of the farm and for the agricultural land. A tractor costs at least £100,000. Now Jacob Rees-Mogg didn't hold back. Rachel Reeves forgot to declare a $5,000 OD donation from Ian Corfield, who conveniently became an unpaid Treasury advisor after the mess surfaced. Lord Ali donated $1,000 to a Labour constituency, and his son suddenly got a pass to number 10, which Ali used to throw a Labour Party bash on one issue in particular, perhaps the most important issue in a generation. The now Prime Minister went from this. A growing number of people now think the only way truly to settle this is to ask people, do you want to leave on these terms, or would you rather remain? Jacob Rees-Mogg took aim at Prime Minister KST's ever-evolving political principles, or lack thereof. The former leader of the Commons called out Starmer's most glaring transformation. His stance on Brexit, once a staunch advocate for a second referendum, Starmer now insists there's no case for rejoining the EU and pledges to make Brexit work. Rees-Mogg wasted no time labeling this as one of the greatest U-turns in modern politics. Don't see that. And there isn't a case for rejoining the EU that means we have to make Brexit work. This is, of course, a remarkable transform. It's not a matter of, say, being in favor of Shamima Begum, being allowed to keep her citizenship, and then changing your mind. Starmer couldn't stick to a position if you superglued him to it. Rees-Mogg quipped his signature. Calm delivery laced with cutting sarcasm. 1 minute, he's advocating for a people's vote. The next, he's mired a Brexit. What's next? Kia, a Nigel Farage fan club. Rees-Mogg didn't stop there. He slammed Starmer's recently reset strategy with Europe, highlighting its inherent contradictions. A trade deal with Germany. Marvelous idea, except for one small detail. Germany doesn't have the authority to sign trade deals. It's an EU competence. But why let facts get in the way of a good photo op? Why is he being dishonest about something like that? I don't understand this. That everyone knows that trade is an EU competence. Therefore, Germany cannot make trade deals, and it seems to be a classic case of somebody you cannot trust. In a little thing, you cannot trust in a big thing. And this just one of those little lies that Chaz in be fundamentally unstraight. Anyone who's been awake for the last 8 years knows that one of the reasons we wanted Brexit, it was so we could make our own trade deals. See you. We couldn't do it through the European Union. He pointed out how ST's so-called reset brings the UK closer to the EU's regulatory orbit. The very thing Brexiteers fought to escape. Keir doesn't want Brexit to work. He wants it to morph back into EU membership, just with a different label, Rees-Mogg remarked with an eyebrow raised. Rees-Mogg also dissected Starmer's vague promises, particularly His non-committal comments about immigration reforms, the old no plans trick. How original no plans today just means they're waiting for the bad news. Later, Starmer's government has mastered the art of saying a lot while committing to nothing. Mr. Speaker, on the day when inflation went to 9%, the highest for 40 years, I think, the watching public, the least they can expect, is a prime who concentrates on the cost of living crisis. Clearly, he just can't make his mind up. So, let's have a look at who's for it and who's against it. On one side, the chair of Tesco, the chair of John Lewis, the chair of the Treasury Select Committee, the chair of the Education Select Committee, Lord Hay, Lord Brown, the old CEO of BP, all support a WINF tax. Jacob Rees-Mogg, the man who blends wit with precision, didn't hold back as he dismantled Keir Starmer with inflation soaring to record highs. Starmer tried his hand at tough-talking the government on the cost of living crisis. But as Rees-Mogg pointed out, the Labour leader's strategy was little more than political posturing, wrapped in vague platitudes. Starmer stood there, listened endorsements like a desperate salesman. Rees-Mogg quipped, rolling his eyes. He's got the chair, Tesco, John Lewis, the ghost of Christmas, past all clapping for a windfall, tax how riveting, but notice how he conveniently leaves out the economists and energy experts who actually understand the issue. Selective much, when he's not sticking notes on people's desks like some overgrown prefect. It's dead set against it. When is he finally going to get a grip, stand up for the people for Britain, and get on the right side of the argument? Rees-Mogg turned his focus to Starmer's cheap jab at him, where the Labour leader dismissed him as an overgrown prefect. Rees-Mogg's rebuttal was swift and biting. "Oh, Keir, is that the best? You've got a playground taunt." This from a man whose speeches sound like they were written by a committee of beige cardigans, but the core of Rees-Mogg's takedown was Starmer's inability to propose practical solutions. He's mastered the art of criticizing without contributing. He can demand a windfall tax all day. But where's his plan to fix the systemic issues driving inflation? Spoiler, there isn't one. Rees-Mogg didn't stop there. He skewered Starmer's refusal to address the bigger picture. Keir loves a sound bite. But let's not forget, this is the same man who stood on a manifesto promising nationalizations that would bankrupt the economy. Forgive me if I don't take financial advice from him. The pièce de resistance Rees-Mogg's closing shot? The watching public deserves a leader with clarity and conviction, not someone who throws darts at a policy board hoping something sticks. Is not standing up for Britain. He's standing up for applause. The audience got exactly what they tuned in for, a masterclass in dismantling political fluff with style, love him or hate him. Rees-Mogg proved yet again that when it comes to sharp, unfiltered commentary, he's in a league of his own. And then there's Starmer, who made grand promises to rebuild trust in politics. Yet we're watching him stumble into the very trap he once condemned. What does that say about the future? That no matter how hard we try to change, we're bound to be let down by the same old system, the same broken promises, the same betrayals. It's heartbreaking, and Jacob didn't just call it out. He gave voice to the frustration we all feel deep down. If this isn't a call to action, I don't know what is.